Welcome to English 4E. This is Term 2A, Class 12. We're going to be working on assignments K20 and K21 today, and also working on misused words. This is Jillian Percy, and here is our contact information. If your hand has been in, please hand it in to studentwork@nec.on.ca. That way the secretary can log that you've submitted the work. Please include your full name, course name, assignment number, and name. If you're trying to reach me, email is the best way, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can also work on Facebook, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. And I am at the same address on YouTube where we keep recordings of previous classes. So if you need to catch up on a class, that's where you would check things out. Okay. Today's work, we are going to understand how homophones can create confusion and misused words, become familiar with some common confusions in words, edit two passages with an I for possible misused words, understand how to use a dictionary thesaurus to help find the correct word when a word might be wrong, and understand confusions between adjectives and adverbs. Okay. So I'm going to kind of talk about the assignment first and then kind of go into all the details about how to do it. So key question 12 is on misused words, and it says, as mentioned earlier, homonyms, but I'm going to use the word homophones because I think it's clearer, are words that sound alike but are spelled differently and have different meanings. Many people confuse these similar sounding words. The exercise below should help clear up the problems, not on this slide, but coming up. First of all, they want you to find the misused word in each sentence of the two passages. There's two different paragraphs, paragraph A, paragraph B. I'm going to show them to you in a second. And once you find the incorrect word or misused word, then you're going to identify what would the correct word be in that sentence. There are 10 mistakes in each of the paragraphs. You're going to underline or circle the mistakes within each paragraph and then fill in the chart below. They have also numbered the sentences, tiny little numbers, so it's easier to find them and list them. So here's what the chart is going to look like. And here's an example. This is the passage A. See, the little one means what sentence we're in. Did you know that until May 5th of every year, comma, you're not really working for yourself? So here's sentence number. I put the one down. The misused word is your, and they want us to say what would be the correct word. And if you know it, you would put it in here. Here are the two passages. Passage 1. Did you know that until May 5th of every year, you're not really working for yourself? A group in Ottawa, Ontario has learned that it takes workers an average of 4 months and 4 days to earn enough to pay their taxes. The group found in its study that taxes eat up 34% of all the income in this country. So, if workers used their entire income for taxes, they would not be through paying them until May. Being that May 5th is the first day people really work for themselves, the study group has some advice. It would like a bill passed naming May 5th Tax Freedom Day. On that day, you would give yourself a break, irregardless of how hard you worked. For from May 5th on, you would finally be your own boss. So there's 8 sentences there. And remember that there's 10 mistakes for each passage. So some of these sentences may have more than one mistake. Passage B. Did you ever daydream about writing your life story? Do you think that your life is too dull or you can't write? Anyone's life story is filled with fascinating events, and writing them down in the best way you know can give you a sense of accomplishment and perhaps leave a valuable inheritance to your family. The first thing to do is buy a loose leaf notebook. Each page of the book should be titled with a significant milestone in your life, from your first dog to your proudest moment. You should then jot down a few key words in the book whenever a memory comes back to you. The idea is not to begin with, I was born, and try to write a chronological history of your whole life. Just delve into your past at random. One memory will trigger another. It will become quiet easy after a while. It's also important to write in your own language. Plain, honest writing is the goal. Okay. And again, that one has 11 sentences. So there's going to be 10 mistakes. There may be a sentence or two that doesn't have any mistakes. So be on the lookout for that too. All right. So if you're reading those and you're not really sure what the mistakes are, okay, because they don't show them to you. You have to kind of figure it out. First of all, you can check the chart. We have this at the beginning of Unit 1, and it's a little chart on really commonly misused words. This is what I would check very first because these are just so commonly mistaken that I would feel there's a strong chance that these mistakes are somewhere in those passages. So first, it's spelled its is a possessive, and it's often confused with its it apostrophe s, which stands for it is. And here's some examples for it's as possessive. A bull moose is known for its aggression in the fall. So the aggression is it belongs to the moose in a sense. Or I could have a sentence like, it's a beautiful sunny day. Now, in that case, it's is short for it is. Okay. So they have different meanings completely in the sentence. If you're not sure, if you're looking at one of them, the thing I would do is if it's got the apostrophe, stretch it out to it is. Does it make sense? Like if I had a bull moose is known for it is aggression in the fall, it doesn't make any sense. So I know that one, ITS, is correct. Okay. That's one way to check things. The next set is, sorry, they're a bit tricky to say now that I see them together. Lose, where there's kind of a Z sound to the S, or loose. Okay. Lose means things gone missing or you've been defeated, right? You didn't win. Loose is like it's not contained, it's detached. Like she wore her hair loose that day. So in a sentence, when did you lose your necklace? And the little boy's sneaker laces have come loose. So the meanings are really close here. Lose, when did you lose it? Where did it go? What could we substitute in there that would make sense, right? Whereas the neck down, a necklace could have come loose, but then the sentence would be a little bit different, like your necklace came loose and fell to the floor. The little boy's sneaker laces have come loose. So they became untied. You could have, what else could be loose? A dog could run loose. A cat could run loose. It's a little bit different. These two are really common, in part because I find people say these two the same. Than with an A, which is a comparing one, or then with an E, which is talking about the timing or the sequence of something. So for than, I am older than my sister. You could have things like, I would rather have chocolate than vanilla. I would, or he would rather go fishing than go golfing. It's a comparing. You're always looking at two different things. Then is talking about a sequence. We will check our gear, then we can go fishing. So something else is happening first, and this is happening next. Okay. The way I always remember it is then looks a lot like when, and when is a time word. So then is also a time word. Hang on, the sentence kind of, there we go. It goes on to the next page. Okay. These three, there, and there, they all sound exactly the same. but they're spelled different and they have different meanings. This is probably one of the mistakes I see most commonly. And that's true regardless of first language. It's just because they do sound exactly the same, it's easy to mix up. So there is a location word, at that place. Like he left it over there. This is one where I always remember things like, just like a little trick, where. Where, there. They rhyme. They're connected to the idea of location. The next there is possessive. So the students have submitted their assignments for marking. In other words, the assignments that belong to them. For this one, what I've sometimes seen, see the little I? I've sometimes seen the little I turned into a person, right? So this one is where possessive, it belongs to the person, okay? The next one is a contraction, there, but it's short for they are. They're really happy that summer is almost here. And just like we talked about with the other contraction, stretch it back out into the two words. They are really happy that summer is almost here. If you can stretch it out and it makes sense, then you've used the correct spelling. For example, if I said, he left it over, they are, that doesn't make sense. So I would know that THEY apostrophe RE would be the wrong word in that sentence. The next one is whose and whose. You can see the issue coming up here over and over again is the possessive form of some words and the contraction form sound exactly the same. So that's a very common mistake. Whose, spelled WHOSE, is possessive. Whose books are these? Whose coat was left on the floor? It's a question word, but it's also talking about possession. It's her books. It's his books. It's their books. Then whose is short for who is, spelled WHO apostrophe S. Who's going to the store with me? And just like any other contraction, spread it back out into two words. Who is going to the store with me? So up top, I couldn't say who is books are these. It doesn't make sense. So that's one way to keep the two separate. And then the last one here is your, Y-O-U-R, possessive, and your, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, short for you-are. It's a contraction. Your, have you received your money yet? And then we've got you're a wonderful friend, as in you are. And again, like we've talked over and over about, with the contraction, spread it back out. You are a wonderful friend. That makes sense, so I've spelled it correctly. If up here I had your like this, oops, sorry, with the E afterwards. Have you received you are money yet? No, that doesn't make sense. So I know I've spelled it wrong. So in which case, use the other spelling, right? Again, that little chart is right at the beginning of Unit 1 in ENG 4E. So if you check your papers, you will see it there if you need to do it while reading through those passages. Now, what if the word you need to fix is not on that list? Because I'm sure not every single mistake is going to be one of those, okay? So here's an example. In science, the importance of cause and effect cannot be overstated. So affect. I don't think that's right. What can I do? Well, one place you can check is the dictionary. I can go to the word affect and see what it means and see if I've used it correctly. So when I checked the dictionary under the word affect, there was a bunch of definitions and stuff, but then at the bottom of those, it had like a little paragraph explaining this because it is a really commonly confused word for many, many, many people. So affect with an E versus affect with an A. And this is a little usage guide. Affect and affect are often confused because of their similar spelling and pronunciation. The verb affect, entry number 2, usually has to do with pretense or pretending something, like she affected a cheery disposition despite feeling down. That's kind of somewhat old-fashioned phrasing, but it's the idea of she's pretending to be happy even though she's not. The other one is the they put entry number 1, having an effect or an influence. The weather affected everyone's mood. Now, if I take a quick look back at my sentence, influence versus pretending. The importance of cause and influence, that's not what I was meaning. The importance of cause and pretense. Okay, I don't think effect is the word I wanted. Now, looking over here, the verb effect goes beyond mere influence. It refers to the actual achievement of a final result. The new administration hopes to effect a peace settlement. Uh, ba, ba, ba. I've usually seen it more used as a noun. For example, at the very bottom, they've got two examples like, he's waiting for the new law to take effect. The weather had an effect on everyone's mood. And the phrase you'll see over and over again is cause and effect. So if I wanted to fix that, now I know how, I would change that to become EFFECT. I know that not all the time, we don't always have time to look up every single word in the dictionary, but after a while, when you're writing a lot, you'll begin to recognize, hey, this is one of those words that is commonly confused. I'm going to check real quick and make sure I've used it. For the purposes of the assignment, I would write whatever sentence number 2, I'm going to pretend. I misused the word affect, and the correct word is effect. So that's how it would look on the area where you're doing your assignment, okay? If you don't have room on your papers to write it, maybe you write big or whatever, it's fine to do it up on the computer or to write it on line paper. It doesn't have to be done on the actual unit paper. That's fine. Now, the dictionary is probably not going to have a paragraph on every possible word mix-up. Like the effect affect is such a common one that it does, and I'm sure it will have some others, but it might not have everyone. So how can I find out what the mistake is? Well, the other tool we can use is the thesaurus. So here's a sample sentence. The protesters were standing up for the principle of equal rights for all people. Now, I can look up the word principle in the thesaurus to see if the synonyms they give suggest the same meanings that I think principle has. Because if I can put the synonym in there and it makes sense, then I've used the correct word. Okay. So if I go to the thesaurus, here's what came up. There was a few, but this one was kind of closest. The definition of principal is like a star, the person who has the most important role in a play, movie, or a TV show. My cousin is one of the principals in a new sitcom this fall, like the lead, the star, um, the leading man. Let's see. So I was confused. That isn't, I wasn't aiming for the idea of star, right? I was thinking of something else. The thesaurus also had some articles on commonly confused words after this round of synonyms. So when I went over here to the middle, principal versus principal, and I looked it up to see what was some of the issues. And over here, there's other commonly confused words if you wanted to look things up. This is from the online dictionary, by the way, in case you're thinking about it. Principal versus principal. I'm deliberately saying them a little bit different. In real life, we often say them almost exactly the same. So principal as an adjective means the most important, but it can also be a noun, right? It can refer to somebody in a leading position or the boss of a school, right? He is the principal over at Sioux North. Principal with the LE rather than the AL can only be a noun. It can never be an adjective. And it refers to like a fundamental truth, or you could phrase it as a code or a law or an underlying quality that motivates your behavior. Like, I am following my principles. The trick I learned when I was in school is the word principal. Remember, the principal is your pal. So the guy who's the boss at the school is your pal. This is the other kind of principal. Okay. So going back to my original sentence, I have not got this right. I would want the LE because I'm talking about standing up for a fundamental truth, the truth of equal rights. Okay. Again, I know this is taking a little bit longer, but like I said, after a while, you'll kind of get the hang of these. Okay, here is a video on misused words. I liked it because it had some little tricks.
In English, there are many words that sound or look alike but have different meanings, and your spell check.
And I'm not sure why I'm not getting noise. I thought I had shared the sound. Looks like I've shared the sound. Oh, that's too bad because this is really cute. Huh. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna let it play just a little bit longer in
Checker can't always
case. No, his mouth is moving. Mm. Okay.
describing little or
If I get
no
a
noise.
chance, I will try and listen to that later. The thing with this that I really liked was just how I was showing you some little tricks to remember the differences between the two words. They had a bunch of little different tricks. And I just find those kind of ways to help us remember the right spelling can be really useful when you're kind of flying hour long writing and don't want to look up every single word in a dictionary, obviously. I'll see if I can come back to that later. I'm not sure what happened there. Hang on, let me just no, I'll come back to it at the end, I guess. All right. So moving on from there, those aren't the only kind of misused words or commonly confused words. One other issue is um, there's a difference between adjectives and adverbs that get confused. And the reason is English has base or root words, right? And sometimes we add certain endings that work to change them from one part of speech to another part of speech. And that's true not just from adjectives to adverbs. There are lots of different parts of speech that we can change from one to another. Now, often, if we're speaking in English all the time, we pick these up automatically. We use them so instinctively, we don't even realize we're really doing it, right? It just becomes part of our speech. So, for example, we will often change an adjective into an adverb simply by adding ly to the end of the adjective. So remember, adjectives describe nouns and adverbs describe verbs and sometimes adjectives and what's the other one? Adverbs. So the room was neat and tidy. So here the word neat is an adjective and it's describing the noun room. She neatly put away her toys. Here, neatly is an adverb, and it's describing how the girl is putting away her things. All right. So here's what we talked about. Um, happy dog or silly child are some examples of adjectives describing nouns. Um, drive carefully or run quickly is some examples of adverbs modifying verbs. Okay. Sometimes, though, people will get mixed up and accidentally use an adverb to describe a noun or use an adjective to describe a verb. And when that happens, it can leave your reader feeling a little bit confused. For example, it's totally correct to say, the fox runs quickly. The adverb quickly is describing the verb runs. However, it is not correct to say the fox runs quick because quick is an adjective and it can only be used to describe a noun, which it's not doing there. I could fix the sentence to say the quick fox runs after the bunny, and in that case, the adjective quick is describing fox. This is a really subtle little difference, right? If you're talking fast, you might not even hear the "ly" at the end of a sentence, right? So you may not be aware that that's an issue. And then when you go to write, it's like, oh, wait, I didn't know what was going on there. So now, theoretically, it can happen the other way. Although I find it happens a lot less often, except for some irregular formats. And the reason is it sounds usually quite wrong to use that ly adverb form to describe a noun. So if I said like the sadly teacher picked up the broken aquarium, most people would recognize that. Oh, there's nothing, that's not right. Sadly is an adverb. It can't describe a person. It could describe an action. The word should be sad instead. I could say the sad teacher picked up the broken aquarium. I could also use the word sadly to describe the action if I wanted to. If I was really kind of like key on using the word sad, I could say the teacher sadly picked up the broken aquarium. And before we've talked about word order in English, how where a word is kind of affects what part of speech it is and how we see it. Here, the word sad is in front of teacher because it's describing teacher. Here, the word sadly is in front of picked up because it's describing how she picked up. So that's an example of, we don't usually make that particular mistake 'cause it really does sound quite funny. So with most regular adverbs, we just add ly to an adjective in order to create the adverb form. So some examples would be quick goes to quickly, sweet goes to sweetly, slow goes to slowly, careful, carefully, shy, shyly, brave, bravely, weak, weakly. Now, occasionally, I didn't really put a lot in here, but let's say I had a word like happy. Okay. I wouldn't just, because there it ends in the Y, I wouldn't just put the ly there. I would change the Y to an I, like we did before with other endings, and then add the ly, happily. Okay. In a sentence, the brave squirrel picked up every nut before the dog could catch him. So here, brave is my adjective, and it's describing squirrel. But if I wanted to describe an action instead, I just add ly and I move it to describe the verb. The squirrel bravely scolded the dog when it barked at him. And here, bravely is an adverb, and it's describing the verb scolded. So bravely could go in front of the verb scolded, or it could also go afterwards. The squirrel scolded bravely the dog, or scolded the dog bravely makes more sense, right? Either way is okay. I like it right in front like there. I think it, I don't know, it just sounds better to me, but either one is grammatically correct. Now, keep in mind, you can't turn every single adjective into an adverb. It doesn't always make sense. For one thing, some words that we use to describe nouns just can't be used to describe an action. For example, I can't turn big into bigly, or tall into tally, or blue into bluely, or young into youngly, American into Americanly. It has to make sense, right? You don't want to be, sometimes it's the tricky part about English is we want to apply a rule every single time. And unfortunately, one of the tricky parts about English is often you can't. For this one, it's just common sense, though, right? I can't describe an action as tall because tall has to do with a visual, right? I can't describe an action as having a certain kind of origin. I don't think I could easily, because most actions have nothing to do with what country you're born in, particularly. Um, Also, there are some adverbs that don't need ly ended to the end of a word. Okay, so some examples would be some time words like tomorrow, yesterday, soon, always, never. Those are adverbs. We use them to describe actions. They don't need ly. Some other adverbs that don't end in ly would be some words related to place. Yet is another time one. Away, here, there, so, to, forever, around. Now, the thing with these is they don't have an adjective format, right? They are only adverbs, okay? There are a lot more adverbs like these. I don't have room to put all of them. This is just kind of a sampling of them. If you were curious to know more, you can just look it up in the internet. You would just say, adverbs that don't need ly, and a whole bunch of lists will come up. Okay. I'm only going to talk very briefly about this because kind of a funny one. Sometimes when you add ly to an adjective, it can kind of change the meaning of the word. So if I said the dry towel is over there, everybody knows I mean not wet. But if I said he spoke very dryly and said, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you, Harry Potter," in that sense, the dryly hasn't got to do with wet. It sort of has the idea of being a little bit sarcastic or a little bit mean. It's changed its meaning a little bit. Okay. Sweet to sweetly. The cake is very sweet. I'm describing its taste. But I could say, the little girl sweetly asked her mother to go to the park. There, I'm talking about her tone of voice. Like she's kind of pouring the niceness on, right? Things like thin versus thinly, right? If I was talking about somebody speaking thinly, it's like they're very quiet, they're maybe a little bit upset. Huge versus hugely. Adjective form of huge would mean like big. Hugely as a adverb would mean like a lot, or like he's hugely fond of her. He's really fond of her. It's changed its meaning a little bit. Late versus lately. This is a tricky one because late has a couple of meanings. It could mean like you're not on time, but we also use the word late to mean the idea of somebody who's passed away, like the late Ronald so and so. Lately relates to time, like lately I've been going to the gym, like recently. So in that case, it's not talking about not being on time. It's talking about something that's happened um, recently, or relatively soon to what time you're talking about. It's kind of changed meaning significantly. Another one that would change a lot is terrible to terribly. So I could say, oh, that movie was terrible. And I just mean like it was the worst. It was horrible. It was no good. But I could say, oh, he is terribly fond of that girl. And in that way, I don't mean like it's a bad thing. I mean like he's very fond of her. That has a little bit of a British kind of connotation, but it's again perfectly grammatical. People in Canada do use that kind of phraseology too. So that is something to be aware of. Usually, adjective to adverb, when you add the ly, they kind of retain the same meaning, but there are some exceptions to be aware of. Okay. The other thing to be mindful of is there are a few adjectives that for some reason already have ly, and obviously you can't add another ly. It can be a little bit confusing. Like the word costly means very expensive. So that was a very costly present. It's legitimately describing the type of present, right? Friendly, he is a very friendly dog. Um, Basically, for these, we're taking a noun like friend and we've added ly to turn it into an adjective. I don't know why. It seems like we should have picked a different type of ending. It would make more sense and be less confusing, but I didn't make the rules. I'm just kind of telling you what they are. Lonely, the lonely old man looked out the window. Lovely, the flowers are lovely in the spring. Ugly, the shed is old and ugly. There may be some more. Those are the ones that are really common, though. And obviously, you can't turn those into adverbs. They legitimately are adjectives and can only be used to describe a noun. All right. So, some adjectives and adverb pairs get confused with each other a lot. So, here are some really common ones. The adjective bad has the adverb badly. The adjective real has the adverb really, and the adjective good has the adverb well. Okay, so we're going to talk about bad to badly first. Sometimes people will get mixed up and they will try to use the adjective bad, which is an adjective, to describe a verb instead of describing a noun. So here's an example. He wanted that car bad, right? Bad is describing his wanting, but bad can't describe an action. It has to describe a thing. It should be he badly wanted that car. I think we don't use it that way because it sounds a little bit formal, but that is the correct grammar. And I'm pointing this out because the assignment that we have coming up at the end of this session, it's connected to this kind of idea. So look at the next one. Real to really. Real is the adjective. Really is the adverb. Okay. If I said he went real quickly to the hospital, real is an adjective. I can't describe another adverb like quickly. I can only describe a person, right? Instead, I should have put He went really quickly to the hospital. Real, if I'm describing about a noun, maybe like a real versus an imaginary friend. I think it gets used in like real estate versus different kinds of estate, a real story versus a made up story. It just isn't used the same way at all. Okay, this I think is the hardest one because good, which is the adjective, turns into well. I have no idea why it's so different. And there's no ly ending to help us figure it out. So if you're just looking at good versus well and you weren't sure, we don't have that extra trick to help us. But in this case, good is our adjective and well is the adverb. So we would say, if somebody said, Jonathan ran good in that race, it's incorrect because good cannot describe a verb like ran. It can only describe a noun, a person, a place, a thing. So we need to use the adverb well instead. So I'm just going to kind of underline those so it's a little more obvious. Ran good versus well. The thing is to remember how yesterday we talked about the difference between speech and writing. I think in speech, we really use those two very interchangeably, right? We're not very careful when we talk about this stuff in speech. I mean that for everybody, right? So then when we go to do the writing, we're not really sure because we've been using them both, right? The correct form, Jonathan ran well in that race. And just to kind of clarify, I'm going to put good in a sentence to kind of show how it would look. I could say, the good dog came back when he was called. Um, or remember that adjectives can also come after a verb that's describing the state of being. So if I could say the cake was good. And I think we know the cake was well doesn't quite sound right. But the good dog, the good house. It's a tricky one, but we're going to have to try it because we've got a bunch of exercises that work on these. Okay, so the first one, this is key question 21. The first one, all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first 5 sentences, we're trying to choose whether it's bad or badly that goes in the blank. So you look something today. So I'm going to try both of them and see which sounds right. And then I'm going to think about it. Okay. You look bad today, or you look badly today. All right. In this one, the look is describing the you. You is looking bad. So the bad is an adjective in that sense, and it's describing the you. It's not about they're looking badly, like they can't see or they're not looking carefully. The bad is definitely describing the person. So here I would say you look bad today. That makes sense. I'm not going to tell you all of these, but I'm just going to kind of show you the process. He did bad or badly. So you got to think about, are we describing the he or are we describing how the person did, the action or the noun? I felt bad about my grades or I felt badly about my grades. Again, am I describing the person's feelings or am I describing the person? This change is bad needed or this change is badly needed. Okay. She sang so bad that most of the audience left during the intermission. She sang so badly that most of the audience left during the intermission. This is a tricky one. Think about, are we describing her? Is she bad? Or is the singing bad? Which one is it? Because remember, bad can only describe a noun, like a person, place, or thing. Badly describes the actions. Okay, looking at the next set. Okay, for this set, the next 5 are all about using the word real, which is the adjective, or the word really, which is our adverb. She is a real nice person, or she is a really nice person. Now, again, are we talking about the girl, or are we talking about the action, which which isn't much of an action? Is she a real princess, or is she a really princess? Same idea. He wrote a real good paper about Canadian democracy. So remember, real has to describe a thing. Or he wrote a really good paper about Canadian democracy. Is that painting a real Picasso? Is that painting a really Picasso? Everyone is real tired by Friday afternoon, or everyone is really tired by Friday afternoon. Okay. And then the last set here is good or well. We talked about how that one is really tricky because we don't have the ly. So remember that good is your adjective. It has to describe a noun, a person, place, or thing. Well is your adverb. It can only describe an action or another adverb, possibly an adjective, but for this case, mostly it's going to be describing another adverb. John writes good, or John writes well. Next one. Doesn't she look good in that outfit? Or doesn't she look well in that new outfit? I feel good about my chances of winning. Or I feel well about my chances of winning. Nobody did good on the test. Nobody did well on the test. How good are his chances of winning the contest? How well are his chances of winning the contest? For some of these, you could just kind of listen and you would be able to tell right away which one it is. But for others of them, you really, really couldn't. So I'm just trying to take a quick look to see if I can get yeah, I've got share sound on. Okay, I want to go back to that one that had some of the little tricks and see if I can make it work because I really thought it was really helpful.
In English, there are many words that sound or look alike but have different meanings, and your spell checker
Okay,
can't
it's not
always tell
working
the
that way.
difference. So,
I'm just going to check something real quick and see if I can do it on a different way. See if I can move this little. This is one of those things that kind of floats around on me when I'm looking at things. There we go. Okay. YouTube and see misused words. Misused or commonly confused words. I didn't think about it, but this is another way you could check when you're doing the passage. A lot of different ones come up here. Let me see if I can find that same picture. Again, I just liked it because it had the neat little tricks in there. Oh, there we are. Let's see if it'll work here, or if my sound is just turned off.
This is me booking.
Oh, my sound is just turned off.
This is me booking.
Huh. I'm
This
not
is
sure what I'm
me
doing wrong
booking.
because it definitely said, yep. All
And
right,
this is
my
me.
apologies, friends. I don't know what's going on with that. All right, going back to the back, which kind of leaves out that one too. Okay. Tomorrow we're going to work on the culminating assignment for this unit. And it's kind of a big one. It's kind of ambitious. We're going to be working on writing a short story of our own. So if you get a chance, look ahead in case you have any questions about the assignment. That'd be a great time to ask me. You could also take a look on the internet for some short stories to read so you're more familiar with the format. A lot of people, once they're done school, they read novels or they read news articles, but they don't really read short stories. And although short stories are very similar to novels, They do have some really big differences. Um, some that you might find, the monkey's paw is really a classic one. I'm going to see if I can find a few out there, but I know if you go to some sites that you can find some different short stories to read, even if it was just like fan fiction about your favorite movies and things like that. So if you're having any kind of problems, any kind of confusion with this, please by all means send me an email and I'd be happy to talk to you and help you with things. After this, we're going to be moving on to Unit 2, which is basically all about the novel. So if there's anyone out there that hasn't received the novel for some reason, please give me a phone call so I can make sure that you've gotten it. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any predictions. Don't read ahead. Tomorrow I'll kind of let you know about whether we want to read ahead or not. All of Unit 2 is discussing the different chapters, reflecting on it, and basically writing about our novel, which is a really good one if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. Okay, so thank you so much for coming out today. We're ending just a little bit early today because basically, unfortunately, some of my stuff didn't work, and I apologize for that. I'll see what was going wrong. And I will meet up with you guys tomorrow to talk about how to start writing a short story. Probably take us to Thursday too, but tomorrow for sure, we'll start talking about that. Thank you so much. And we're going to be moving on. So